Hello friends, Jim here with Science Talk, and I want to discuss with you a question that I'm sure has been burning in everyone's mind. Why there's so many marsupials in Australia? It's actually quite fascinating. That's why I chose to discuss this with you. Now we know that Australia is basically where marsupials dominate. You know, you got kangaroos, you got koalas, wombats, etc. So now the question paleontologists have always wondered is, did marsupial is actually marsupium is Latin for pouch. Right? So did these pouch bearing mammals, did they arise from down under? Right? And the answer is an unqualified no. It did not. Marsupials have been around for at least 70 million years before they made it to Australia. And this is according to Robin Beck, who is a lecturer in biology at the University of Salford in the UK. Beck basically said, marsupials absolutely categorically did not originate in Australia. They are immigrants. I guess that was a rather emphatic statement. Now, when you look at most mammals, marsupials seem to be odd. Okay. Unlike placental mammals, humans, dogs, whales, moose, right? Marsupials give birth to relatively undeveloped young that continue to grow in the mother's pouch. Now, it certainly is a less painful birth, that's for sure, but basically the young emerge out the uterus in an extremely poorly developed state. It barely has, the hind legs have not even started to even form buds. But it does have strong claws for front feet, which cling to the fur of the mother, and using chemical cues, follows its way into the pouch. It attaches itself to a teat, and then it finishes its development that way. So there are some evolution, because you have a placental mammal that's growing a newborn to a very large size in utero. That female that is gestating is at risk. They cannot run as fast, so if they're being hunted, and if they can't escape as readily, so they're at risk. Their gestating fetus is at risk. And of course, placental mammals giving birth is a painful process. So don't be so quick to ridicule marsupials. In a lot of ways, their way of gestation and growth has advantages. As it turns out, the oldest known marsupial are actually from North America, where they evolved during the Cretaceous after splitting off from placental mammals about 125 million years ago, splitting off placental mammals. So there was a divergence there. So placental mammals and marsupials have a common ancestor. We're not even talk about the monotremes, which are the only egg-laying. Well, you have the platypus and the echidna that lay eggs, and there's no specified gland with a nipple by which the milk is available, but rather the milk for the monotremes is a secretion that the young simply lap off the fur of the mother. So this is related to the speculation that the mammary glands are actually modified sweat glands. So going back to the marsupials arising, they flourished in North America, populating the supercontinent of Laurasia. Initially 15 to 20 different marsupial species, all of which are now extinct. It's unclear why these marsupials did well, but for some reason, about the time that non-avian dinosaurs went extinct about 66 million years ago, the marsupials made their way down to South America. Now, keep in mind, plate tectonics. At the time, North and South America were connected, as they are today, but the connection was broader than the simple isthmus of Panama that is today. There were much more in connection. And there was also a land bridge to Antarctica. So you have land bridges, island bridges, whatever, and then you had Antarctica, and they were attached to there. So now once they made it to South America, marsupials basically had adaptive explosion, adaptive radiation, and they diversified a lot, and within 2 to 3 million years, you had marsupials and the close relatives evolved into bear, weasel-sized carnivores. One even evolved saber teeth. Others evolved to eat fruit and seeds. So here's an example of convergent evolution. You have, the same forms evolving within different groups. So, as Beck says, they basically evolved to fill the available niches. Very simple. So many of these initial species marsupials did go extinct, but South America today is still, they still have quite a few marsupial species there. More than 100 species of opossums. Opossums is different from possums. Possums are in, we'll get to that in a moment. So you have 7 species of shrew opossums. Okay? And then there's the Monito del Monte, which is literally Spanish for little monkey of the mountain. Now, within the last 1 million years, one of South America's opossums did travel back north into North America. This is the Virginia opossum, and it's the only marsupial living north of Mexico. Opossums belong to a different order than possums. Possums are native to Australia and New Guinea, closely related to kangaroos. So then, opossum and possum are not interchangeable words. Opossums is South America and the one species in North America. Possums aren't in Australia and New Guinea. So now the question is, okay, how did they go from South America to Australia? And I kind of already hinted at that. About 40 million to 35 million years ago, South America and Australia were connected to Antarctica, all part of that big supercontinent. Now, Antarctica was not at the bottom of the planet. It wasn't covered in ice. It had a temperate rainforest. As Beck says, it was not a bad place to live. So it appears that the marsupials and their relatives simply migrated across. Went from down South America, across Antarctica, across into Australia. And there's fossil evidence to support this. On Antarctica's Seymour Island, there are fossils of marsupials and their relatives, including a close relative to the Monito del Monte. The oldest fossil marsupial from Australia are found at a 55 million-year-old site called the Tingamara, which is near the town of Murgon in Queensland. And my apologies to Louise and Kathy if I'm totally mispronouncing that. Some of the fossil marsupials at Tingamara are similar to those in South America. And as an example, we had a tiny fruit-eating marsupial that's called a Chopasia from Peru, is a close relative of another fossil marsupial found at Tingamara. And also from Tingamara, we had the insect-eating Dejadiah, which may be the ancestor of all living Australian marsupials. Then, for some reason, there's a big gap in the Australian fossil record. After Tingamara, the next oldest marsupial fossils on record are 25 million years old. What we see then is clearly there's been a huge amount of diversification within Australia. This is according to Beck. By that time, we see koalas, we see relatives of wombats, we see relatives of bandicoots. Basically, all the major Australian marsupial groups are present by 25 million years ago. So why do marsupials thrive in Australia? Well, one idea is that when times are tough, marsupial mothers could jettison any developing of embryos/fetuses. Right? Now, as it, placental mammals usually have to wait until gestation was over. That's not quite correct. There, especially among pinnipeds, which are seals and their relatives, and a lot of ungulates, mammals, if resources are scarce or the mother is stressed out physiologically, the female will induce abortions, and any developed gestating fetus/embryo is exited, is gotten rid of, is jettisoned. So not quite correct there with that statement, but it's certainly an easier process for the marsupial than it is for placental mammals. Also, don't forget, among pinnipeds, for example, they have, some species have what's called delayed implantation. So the eggs are fertilized, creating a zygote, but they're not implanted into the uterus just yet. Sometimes they're stored and implanted in the next mating season, or when conditions are more favorable if they were not implanted due to unfavorable conditions. Some other species have delayed fertilization, where the sperm is simply stored and then at some later point is introduced to the ova. So there are certain strategies employed by some groups of placental mammals to help deal with unfavorable conditions. So another idea is that there were no placental mammals competing with the marsupials in Austria, but this idea is now contradicted by a fossil tooth that belongs to a placental mammal on a placental mammal relative discovered, or a placental mammal relative discovered at Tingamara. It does indicate that placental mammals were on the continent as far back as 55 million years ago. So now, could it have been that any placental mammalian species simply migrated off of Australia before the continents did their splitting? That's a possibility. Today, there are about 250 marsupial species alive in Australia, around 120 marsupial species in South America, and just the one, the Virginia opossum, living in North America. So, if you think about it, the marsupial's ancestral geography has done a 180, it's flipped around, which is a complete reversal of the situation 25 million years ago, Beck said. So, very interesting, looking at the diversity and distribution of the marsupials, along with some hypotheses as to why they're found where they are. So, thank you for your time, and we'll talk soon. Hey folks, this is Jim here reminding you to please subscribe to my channel and please share my videos with others. Also remember to click the bell so that you know when I drop in a new video. I also ask that you please consider becoming a patron of my channel and support the work that I do by going to patreon.com/Science Talk with Jim Massa, each word separated by an underscore, and becoming a patron. It's asking for as little as $3 a month, cost of a cup of coffee, to support the work I do and keep my informative videos coming your way. Thank you for your support.